Hey folks, it's Rob Flux here from Property Developer Network, and today I have a special guest with me, one of my former students, Matt Campbell, and we are going to be talking all about finding money partners.
Absolutely.
And I guess Matt's had a bit of a killer ride. I guess coming from a standing start to now 17 projects, mate.
17, yeah.
And all of them, folks, with no money down. And so thought it would be good to, I guess, go through the journey, use that as an opportunity to get some real world experience on some of the things that I guess, tell out to the world as to the fact that no money down deals can actually be done, and your proof point of that happening.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have lots of challenges in just their pure belief that it's even possible, right? And I find that the roadblocks we put in front of us, I guess, typically bigger than the actual challenge that's there. So
Yeah,
from a headspace, mate, what was the thing that made that light switch to go, hey, I can actually do no money down?
Yeah, great question, and thanks for having me, Rob. So for me, it became about education. I had a limiting belief whether or not I could be a property developer for many, many years. And April 17, went through a marriage breakup and really had to restart my life. My equity was tied up with my ex, and we've worked through that and everything's great there. But for me, I had to reset my life, and I threw myself into education. And no regrets. And I think I did get to a point where I became the course junkie. I went to course after course after course in Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne, and just got to a point where I had to take action. And for me, the first project came about in Brisbane, but I'd actually met the money partner at an event in Sydney. And
well, before we go diving too far into there, I want to play this out for people that have, I guess, the delusions of grandeur that they want to do this, but they don't have the belief in themselves.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of tease that out and go, well, how do we go through the emotional roller coaster that the next people are about to do?
Yeah.
I want people to see your roller coaster in going through that, mate, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of, I didn't know what I didn't know. Certainly like riding a bike for the first time. I come back to the education. It definitely gave me some skill and some knowledge and confidence to go do this. And, following the processes of the different courses I've done, just helped me get into my first project. But at the end of the day, I had to take some action and learn some new skills, and here I am.
It's only when your actual feet are on the ground that you get the true learning.
Yeah, and the real learnings.
The real learning.
The real feedback.
The real feedback. So, mate, deal number one, you said, I guess, equity was all tied up, so getting access to funds was quite tricky. Some of the most common challenges that people have is, look, I'm trying to convince a money partner to invest in me, and I'm trying to get a deal at the same time, but I'm talking about this hypothetical project that doesn't yet exist. How do I convince someone, firstly, that the hypothetical money is going to be there, and secondly, that I've got the skills to execute that? So, because that's a hard chat, right?
Yeah. I know my second and subsequent projects, I had a lot of those scenarios. In my first project, I was quite fortunate in that I'd met a lot of people in these communities, and I got a call one day from a lady in Sydney and said, hey, I'm negotiating a potential purchase in Brisbane. You're in Brisbane. Why don't you represent me on the ground and we do a project together? It just happened that I had already met the money partner. So I guess in many ways, I was shadowing this person from Sydney, negotiating myself with her, and we purchased an amazing project in Brisbane. But I learned a lot because I really had to put myself out there. The negotiating was something new for me. I guess just winged it in many ways.
Yeah. So and you downplayed that a little bit. So I want to kind of tease that out a little bit. So you had built relationships, and that's probably the key thing.
Great relationships.
Right. So building relationships is the most important part of this. So, expression that I use all the time is they need to know, like, and trust you. Right? Before you actually start talking money, know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
Because nobody will know, like, and trust you at the point where, hey, I've just found a deal. I've got 14 days for finance. I'm just meeting a money partner. I've got to convince them to A, that I'm a nice guy. B, can they get all their finances approved? In order to do their finances, they need to go do their tax returns for the last 3 years that they haven't done. They have to review my joint venture contract and give them all these legal documents that are, contracts that thick. You don't do that at the last second. You have to build that relationship up front. Right? And so that's what you did do successfully. And so then the opportunity just met.
Yeah, the opportunity and the money just matched. The opportunity I had was really to project shadow an experienced developer on deal number one, which gave me incredible confidence that I still reflect on. That project is an incredibly complex project. It's probably a 7.5, 8 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. We had risk mitigations all lined up if the scenarios didn't quite work out. So from a risk profile point of view, it was controllable, but it still was a high degree of difficulty, that project. But shadowing someone early on helped me build my own confidence so that I could actually go do it effectively myself and with other people who are now shadowing me.
Yeah, and you and I have a personal affinity to that one project.
Yes.
So for those who don't know, Matt ended up buying a project that I looked at. I'd looked at it about 12 months earlier when the price point was that much higher. And I think a lot of the work that myself and a number of other people did beforehand reset that vendor's expectations. And you've come in at the last minute, Stephen Bradbury, mate, and you've snaffled it at a very good price that made the deal actually work. Whereas before, the numbers he was asking for just didn't work.
Yeah, you did all the legwork, so thank you very much.
I didn't do all of it. I just did some of it.
Or some of it. But I vividly remember the negotiation was either, as Rob teaches, it's either price or on terms. And we gave him an offer for both scenarios. And in the end, he just wanted a quick exit, and we were able to do that over a period of time that suited. But again, I was shadowing someone. I took my own learnings and applied them, and very happy with that project.
Yeah. So you touched on price and terms. I'll just flesh that out for everyone who's not heard me say things like that before. So if they want a specific price, then what terms do you need to actually make that happen? Or if they want specific terms, then what price does that actually make the deal actually work out, right? You can pay someone more where they give you time and where they allow you to share risk in the deal. So they're the two levers that you can actually pull. So with those terms, I'm happy to pay overs for a property if I get the terms to make it work. Like if I'm not paying holding costs, I'm not paying interest, I'm not paying stamp duty, I'm not paying rates and land tax and all sorts of things, why give those to Office of State Revenue and why give those to the council?
Absolutely.
Right.
No, you're right. And as I reflect on that first project, my money partner has grown so much through the process. He's actively looking for projects of his own now. So it's been a win-win all around. Both I've grown through the project, he's grown through the project, and it's just been a really good experience today.
That's fantastic, mate. So that was kind of getting into deal number one. So a lot of people struggle with that first one. And that was a joint venture, just to be clear, right?
Yeah.
So probably worthwhile for us to actually flesh out, I guess, joint venture is that one person is typically the sweat equity partner, in that instance, the working party. And the other party is typically, the money partner. So there are three parts to money. There's equity, so that is deposit to purchase the property. There's serviceability, which is the ability to borrow to actually get the debt. And then there's liquid cash to actually run the deal.
Correct.
Right. So in that instance, money partners providing all three.
Yeah, and in this arrangement, the money partner was interstate in Sydney, so I had a geographic advantage, one being in Brisbane, and that's where the project was located too. But yeah, the money provider was able to bring to the table through a major lender, the equity, the serviceability, and obviously sufficient cash to run the project.
So as we start going through the journey, we'll actually talk about different ways of actually teasing that out. Because when you're doing JV side of things, it's typically a pure profit split type scenario. And on smaller type projects, it's typically 50-50. So I'm anticipating you're somewhere in that kind of realm.
Yeah, that one was actually 60-40. So 40% to myself as the working party, and 60% to them. But going forward, if it's a JV arrangement, and depending on contribution, it's typically 50-50.
So, which is very, very attractive for deal number one, deal number two, when you've got no money behind you.
Correct.
But at some point, those projects start to pay off. Then you start to have money. Then you start to go, well, I don't need all three of the elements. And then you can start to go, well, now I can actually start to take one or two. And you can start to grow as a developer and keep a little bit more of that cash. And we'll talk through that a little further as we go.
Yeah, correct. I guess the transition from being in paid consulting work back then to being full-time in property development is how I finance projects now. Every project is typically through a non-bank, or if we can buy through a major, we will. But the projects become about the outcome, and so serviceability isn't necessarily as important for me at the moment. It's about the time and length of the project to get in and out. So
fleshing that out in lay terms, you're starting to use more commercial lenders rather than residential lenders. And so when we start to think about that three angle, then the serviceability part disappears.
Correct.
So excuse my middle finger. The serviceability part starts to disappear, but the equity part starts to go up. Right?
Definitely.
Now, commercial lenders are looking more at the profitability of the deal as opposed to, hey, how much money does that make? Right? And so when we start to do that, if the deal makes sense, money will come.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I guess there's a transition period that we'll talk to a little bit later about, well, when that nest egg is there and you've got a little bit of equity, you can start to ratchet some of these things. But so mate, that was deal number one. Deal number, that was back in 2019 from memory.
Yeah, November 2019 we settled on that one.
Yep. So we're only like 3 years, like 3 years ago, right? So and you're at 17 deals, so that's a cracking pace.
Yeah.
Okay, which means that you had to start getting momentum. So how did that momentum start, and when did that start?
Yeah, I would have to say we spent a good year looking for deals, getting into deals, unfortunately crashing some of them, but fortunately for us, probably worked out for the best in hindsight. But it took us probably a year to really get into our second, third, fourth, fifth project. We were just doing FISO after FISO after FISO, and I guess I had to build my own confidence, and did during that process. Trusting the numbers, trusting the quotes, actually probably convincing myself that yes, these projects are a sure thing. Yes, I'm okay to go talk to a money partner and represent this project and risk my reputation for the potential of making the profit that I believe is there. And that took a lot of time. And we touched on relationships, and this whole business is a people business. It's all built on the strength of our relationships. And I always come back to that. And I think it's, the relationship with the builder as well. It's the relationship with your financier, and it's the combined collective picture and presentation that has sort of helped me get into the second, third, fourth, fifth project.
Yeah. Well, I regularly say this, that it is nothing but a people game, and we just happen to be trading property.
Yeah.
That's our widget, all right? But yeah, very much about whether it's a salesman you have relationships with, it's the project I guess the financier, whether it's I guess the salesman selling it,
Yeah.
the whole town planners, or the whole lot.
Absolutely.
Mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So deal number 2 was because deal number 1 you actually went in with someone else. Deal number 2 was probably the equivalent of everyone else's deal number 1. So
Yeah, you're right.
This is the first time that you actually went, hey, I need to actually go get my own money partner right now. So this is the equivalent of, hey, I've never done a deal, except you had one in the bank.
Yeah, so in that year of looking at feasibilities and offering on projects and really refining how we put deals together, this opportunity came up south of Brisbane. It's quite a high-end suburb of Brisbane. And yeah, it was my first $0 down deal. And out of that, I got incredible confidence on how I can buy projects with working with other people's money. So yes, it was a joint venture with a business partner of mine, but we also raised private finance to support the purchase and the running of that project. So yeah, it was a 50-50 joint venture, but we've sourced money through a private finance arrangement, and it was a 1 into 2 knockdown rebuild. And yeah, we've just sold half of that project at auction recently. So we set a suburb record, which is great.
Very good. So suburb record of how much and by how much?
It was, I think, 120, so it wasn't a significant.
120 over the suburb.
Correct.
Okay, well, that's not
Yeah. Post some of the floods we had in Brisbane, and given everything else that was going on in Russia and Ukraine, we're happy with that. Yeah.
Very good, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's the first payday just happened for something that you laid the groundwork on back in 2020.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, and I guess my confidence is growing as it does for anyone as you do, a project after a project. The subsequent deals came through the strength of that relationship with my builder, which maybe is a little creative, but every builder wants to build, and I had formed a great relationship with several builders, but one specifically, and that relationship still exists today. But yeah, he referred me to a couple of sites, and yeah, before I knew it, I was in project 3 and 4, and faced with the same challenge though, is how are we buying this?
Yeah.
And through the networks that I had built and the conversations with potential money partners that I had for many months prior, we were able to put an opportunity in front of them and buy those projects, run those projects, and they're pretty much on the market at the moment selling. So
yeah, very good. Well, there's probably 2 elements of that I'm going to pull apart, right? So there's the relationship with the builder, and you said you've got relationships with several builders now.
Correct.
So you said it as a throwaway line, and it's not a throwaway line. So you said builders want to build, right? Well, they do, but what they really want is repeat business that's nice and easy.
Yeah.
That means they don't have to deal with 50 different people coming in and trying to, I want this particular tile and that sort of color. They want nice, easy. Okay, I've done this deal before. I know exactly what it is.
Exactly.
I know exactly what Matt's favorite colors are. We're just going to lock those in. So nice, easy, repeat transactional business.
It's win-win, absolutely.
Yeah. So by them starting to bring you deals, that means that they're going to get their build process out of it. You're going to get, I guess the project management side of things out of
Correct.
that. So everybody wins in that transaction. So it's amazing how many people don't build relationships with builders.
Yes. Yeah. You're right, Rob. And when you look at the feasibility, the number of times I've had conversations with people who struggle to actually get the build costs and build prices. Builders are so busy at the moment, and again, I come back to the strength of that relationship and being able to talk through how we're going to solve the site challenges through the built form. What he or her believes the right build solution is for that street in that suburb. So it's very much has become a collaborative part of how I go about creating a project vision and actually getting build pricing and actually going into a build contract and building.
Well, and the builder knows that whilst they're going to to make some build money out of it. If you don't make money, you can't do the deal.
Yeah.
And so there has to be a balance between, hey, not over engineering it, not overbuilding it, but doing, a quality look and feel, but not necessarily using all the same expensive parts. There's lots of ways.
Yeah.
Lots of ways to make something look good, which might be a little bit cheaper to actually do.
And in this climate, there's definitely a lot of sensitivity to any build program. There's a lot of concern in the market. We're being quite innovative in how we look to exit projects. So instead of actually going through and building, we're actually exiting on a house and land package, which is effectively a build contract sold to the buyer, but they're buying the land off us at an inflated price. So we're in and out of the project quicker. We're settling on a higher margin for the land because we're adding value to we're adding value to the ultimate buyer by providing a build solution. Whilst it's not absolute certainty, it's a very strong direction on what can be built, will be built, and for what price. So that's working for us at the moment.
Yeah, and so you touched on it. It's less risk for you because you're not exposed to the build contract.
Correct.
Your cash is out much faster.
Correct.
Your velocity of money is there.
Correct.
When we say house and land package, we'll just break that out. So that there's the land contract, then there's the build contract. So the land contract settles, you get paid. Yeah. That's gone. Build contract, relationship with the builder continues all the way through the end.
Yeah.
And that's not your problem.
It's not. No. I still care about my reputation and that the product obviously gets built because I've effectively introduced that, buyer to that builder. But again, I'm confident with the relationship I have with the builder and my own experience with the builder that they're going to get a quality product and be a happy customer.
Yeah. So for anyone in the market right now where they're really super concerned at, I guess, build contract prices, that's a good way as a developer to mitigate your risk in actually doing that.
Yeah.
Works really well from a land subdivision approach, folks. When you're starting to do multi-res type projects, it is not impossible, but it takes a little bit more creativity. If you're doing a 6-pack of townhouses, you can structure it so that there are 6 house and land packages, but it needs to have a builder that is very flexible and I guess a really good legal team to actually put that together. But think about it, folks.
Yeah. So in any site acquisition or capital raise, how I present the project vision and the exit always consists of a house and land exit or selling on practical completion with it being fully staged. So it's good to have multiple options. There's market uncertainty every day of the week, both local and interstate and nationally, and we can only control what we can control. And having multiple exit options, I think, does reassure the money partner or the private financier that there are multiple ways that the project can return that lender's money. If it's not my own personal money, as a worst case, that the project has multiple ways to repay.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we had in prior to this event, because this is pre-recorded, folks, one of the questions that we had prior to the event was how do you convince your incoming money partner about the profitability of the deal when the deal isn't there yet? So you're trying to woo them into the process and say, hey, I'm a good investment, rather than the project is a good investment. But when you're talking about hypothetical, do you talk about, hey, this is the suburb we're farming in, this is the demographics, this is the potential? How do you actually get that message across to them?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of components. I would say 3. Definitely the nature of the project. What is the project? What are the comparables of buying this opportunity and selling this opportunity? So that's a massive component of it. And selling in the same market that we're buying into with that, no expectation of increased price growth. So the actual presentation of what the project opportunity in detail is very, very key, with detailed feasibility, with timelines, risk mitigations, supported by bank valuations. Like, there's a lot that goes into these information memorandum packs. So I think that builds credibility. In turn, I think it helps build credibility about the people involved, such as myself or maybe another joint venture partner or my team. That's a massive component of building trust and rapport and confidence that this project is viable and the timelines are realistic. Now, on a few of my projects, we have had delays, and they're for things that are beyond my control. So being realistic with project hold costs or having contingency in your feasibility for those scenarios are really, really important. And then I guess the third component that is vital is, what is the offer to the money partner? Is this a timeline that suits them? Is it a risk? Is the project of a type of risk profile that suits them? Is there alignment in values? So there's a lot that goes into it. I guess there's no one answer, but it's the combination of the overall presentation and the opportunity that I think is key.
Yeah, well, there's probably 3 or 4 elements that we can pull in in super detail, and we will over the course of this. But you talked about an IM, an information memorandum, as something to actually put in front of them. There's elements that you put in there that are going to be, hey, this is a little bit about the kind of project that we're wanting to do. This is the area we're wanting to do it. Demographics of why this area is wanting that product. But when you've done no deals to date, there's one section that most people forget, and that is my team, right? Which is a thing called borrowed credibility, folks. So borrowed credibility is, hey, here's a picture of my town planner, here's a picture of my architect, here's a picture of my builder, and this is how good they are. Here's a picture of my mentor, here's a picture and so there's all these people that are sitting around you that have a team of absolute rock stars, and then a picture of Matt in the corner going, look what I just put together, right? That borrowed credibility, folks, is don't underrate it. That is the thing that will get you across the line on deal number 1, if you can demonstrate your capability.
Yeah, you're right. And I guess, with deal number 2, 3, so on, I started to treat this as a business. And so I did invest, not only in the education, but in branding, industry associations that, again, just help build my knowledge, build my network, improve my credibility, not only with lenders, but definitely with money partners, with builders, consultants. So for me, I've just been all in, really, and passionate about it. And I probably underestimate what goes into it or what I do because I'm just passionate about it. And I think it just authentically, how I present things just comes across naturally.
Yeah, and I think that treating it as a business is the key.
Yeah.
A lot of people come into this and it's a side hustle, right?
Yeah.
So side hustle, trying to, I guess, while you have a day job, trying to build this, and unless you actually genuinely love it and have that drive for it, a lot of people get a long way towards the goal and they give up just before they hit it.
Yeah, you're right. And I only encourage anyone maybe at that point just to stay the course or reach out and talk to someone or find a way, because it is an amazing industry, and I just generally enjoy helping people. And I think that's one of the value adds that I bring to the table with anyone that I do a project with or lends to me is, how do I help them in their individual property development journey? I'm not an educator. We have the educator here, but project shadowing is certainly something that I offer, where the lender on my project gets to see how I run a project, how I do scheduling, how I do FISOs, how we do subdivisions, how we go through a design process and exit a project. And I think that's really powerful.
So that's all about being open and transparent and having integrity, and when you're being open and transparent, then they're going to see warts and all of a project. They're going to see, hey, it's a bumpy ride, right? And from time to time, as a JV partner, they're going to go, hey, Matt, what the hell's happening there? So no doubt you've had some challenging circumstances and challenging conversations where not every project goes 100% perfect.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I guess it always just comes back to what actually is the real issue, what's causing that, and working through it collaboratively. There's a lot you can do online these days, but having face-to-face conversations is incredibly powerful. Whether it be a challenge with the team or council or potentially maybe even a money partner, whatever, everything's solvable when you talk it through. And outcomes are so key here in this industry, and it is easy to get bogged down in the detail. And very early on, I was probably quite a negative person, and I realised I was my own worst enemy. My attention to detail was actually holding me back, and I realised, yes, that's a strength, but it's also a weakness of mine. So I think self-awareness and self-development is really, really important. Like how I do information memorandums now relative to my first project is totally different, and I'm continually evolving my processes and my systems.
So everyone wants to know, where do you find all these people, mate? All these money partners where do you find them?
Yeah, I'd like to find more of them, definitely. But I have had a good degree of success in finding money partners, and it's come just through my authenticity and the relationships I've built. I'm just genuine about this industry and helping people grow and get into projects. And if that means we do a project together, then great. I mean, a joint venture versus just a lending arrangement are very two approaches. I prefer to enter into a private financing arrangement first, and then help that person get into a project themselves whereby we do a joint venture together. And there's 2 or 3 people that recently have lent with me over the last year, and my other business partner, and we've since returned all their money and their interest, and now I'm in a 50-50 joint venture with them because I help them strategize and get into a project, and it's wonderful to see how their life is being transformed. And a lot of those people, have done Rob's courses or maybe others. I'm again a massive advocate for learning and applying new skills, and I think 2020 and 2021 I just took massive action, and I actually didn't know all the answers, but I became very committed, and committed because I've signed a contract to buy something, and in some instances not 100% sure of where the money is going to come from, and in turn that is a level of commitment that for me has resulted in massive action.
Well, you need kahunas of steel.
True.
So that's worked for you. I don't recommend going in unconditional on a contract until you know where your money is. However, what it's meant is, and there's an expression, you burnt the boats, right?
Yeah.
You went, well, the only way I'm getting out of this is by going forward. And that made you take the action to go forward.
Yeah, definitely wasn't my preference to go unconditional on a couple of projects, but I knew the opportunity was there. I knew the money was right at the door. I just had to be a little unreasonable in how I secured that contract, and I knew I would find the money. The preference is always to have the money readily available, in a project, so that you can be quite aggressive in the negotiation. That's always the preference. It's just interesting that for me, it's become more about finding the opportunity first of late, and then matching that with the money.
Well, you've got the momentum and the network to actually go, okay, this person's going to suit that deal, and this person's going to suit that deal, and but that takes a lot of effort to get there. You didn't quite answer where do you build these relationships?
That was strategic.
So, no, in all seriousness, people want to know where to find money partners, and there's lots of different ways to find them. Do you find them old work colleagues, family and friends? Are they networking groups that you go to? What's the?
Yeah, it is a combination of all of those. Definitely past colleagues that have seen my transition into full-time property development want to experience the same. Definitely the various property meetups, the development site deal hub. There's various Facebook groups that are just great for having these conversations. Definitely, you need to be presenting the project with the purest of intentions and integrity. There are some people out there spruiking projects and things like that. So you do always need to be careful and do your own due diligence. But it's basically through the relationships I've formed with people. I want repeat investors. I want repeat clients, and I'm experiencing that now where I've been able to double people's money in a joint venture arrangement. Or provide them a very good interest rate relative to what they could get anywhere else with security and project shadowing. So it's a win-win. Yeah.
What are some of the curlier questions that a money partner has asked you, where you've kind of gone on the spot, go, holy shit, I don't know how to answer that?
Yeah, I guess I'm very transparent. I'm probably the first to go, look, I'm not quite sure how to answer that, but I know throughout the last 2.5 years, I've had different questions presented to me by money partners. And there's really two types of investors, the first time or the experienced. And, I've had a gentleman lend me, $500,000 inside a couple of days because he gets me. He's got a great risk profile. He's done this before, and perfect type of customer that will keep doing projects again and again. Whereas the other, type of profile, it's their first time. You understand what they're going through. I know early on in my career, I lent some of my self-managed super fund to another developer, and I empathise a lot with anyone I'm borrowing money from now relative to that experience because it is new, it is foreign, and but it's incredibly powerful. And one of my favorite topics is definitely capital raising and raising money, because effectively the number of projects I can do now is limited to how hard I want to work, and because there is money everywhere.
Yeah. So you've touched on a terminology that a lot of people new to this probably won't pick on. So I'll pick up, I should say. So capital raising, right? So before we were talking about joint ventures, now we're talking about capital raising, and they are distinctly different. Mm-hmm. So where I said before, folks, those three things that we're talking about, so the deposit, I guess the serviceability, and then there's the liquid cash to run the deal. I guess when you start to transition away from residential lending, the serviceability element just starts to disappear, right? And instead, you start to have, I guess, the commercial lenders start to say, well, I don't care about how much money you're earning. Yeah. What I care about is the strength of the deal, the merits of the deal. But I want a little bit more risk mitigation, so I want a little bit more equity in the deal, right? So where we're talking capital raise, we're talking about larger deposits, larger amounts of security to actually hold over the project, right? So in a residential lending, people are talking about a 20% loan to value ratio. Mm-hmm. In these commercial projects, they're typically talking about 30% of total development cost, right? So that's a reasonable amount of equity actually needed. So topping up the equity, in order to do that, we're paying some pretty exorbitant interest rates on that stuff, mate.
Yeah, we are, and it's all relative to the perceived risk, I guess. But for me, it's about the overall interest rate, the interest rate from the bank, and then the interest rate from the private lender. So overall, it gets the outcome of buying and being able to run the project. And yes, it's higher than what most people would normally pay, but having 100% profit of a project versus 100% of no project is what the difference is. And when people get comfortable that, it just is what it is to get the outcome.
Yeah, so I'm going to flesh it out to try and, because there's a lot of people that don't even know the terminology we're talking about, right? So when we're talking about equity here, well, I guess that's the 30% deposit we were talking about, or 30% of total development cost. Some of the interest rates that we're talking about could be 15% interest, could be 20% interest, and a lot of novice developers or first-time developers get really shit scared at that 15 and 20% interest rate type number, going, oh my goodness, that's an insane. I could get 2.5 or 3% doing residential lending, but the residential lender won't lend it to you because you haven't got the serviceability to fund the deal.
Yeah.
So you kind of go, okay, well, if I'm doing that, it's a high interest rate, but on a relatively small amount of money and on a relatively small amount of time. When you actually do the math on that, the transactional cost on that from an interest rate perspective ends up, yes, you pay higher interest, but as you said, you get to keep 100% of the profit, whereas before you were giving away 50% of the profit.
Yeah, and there was also 50% contribution in terms of running the project in skill set from typically that other person too. So, but yeah, you are also giving up 100% of the profit. And look, I love running projects with other people. There's no doubt about it. I will do joint ventures, for the rest of my career, but equally I'll do projects that are just 100% mine and either part contributed by my own money or 100% financed through the combination of the bank and the private financier.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna give people some numbers to try and compare.
Yeah.
So if we did a hypothetical project that was 12 months to run, and it was a $2 million total development cost.
Yep.
Okay. On paper, we should be aiming for about a 20% return. So we're looking at pulling out about 400K profit out of that deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
You do that as a JV, that 400K profit is now 200 to them and 200 to you, right? And so that's a nice return, 200K profit out of that when you've put no money in.
Yeah, correct.
But then when we transition over to this equity side of things, and we change how the lending actually occurs, and we say, well, if I come up with the equity, I would need, I guess, 30% of that total development cost.
Yeah.
So 30% of the 2 mil would be about 600K. 600K at 15%. I can't do the math in my head, but
60 grand.
About 60 grand, right? So I'm going to pay this exorbitant 15% interest rate and lose 60K. But 60K is way less than giving away 200K, folks, right? Way less. So yes, it looks like a high number, but now you're walking away with 340K instead of 200K.
Yeah, so it's a different way to look at it. And it took me a while to probably get the confidence to go more the private finance path. But everyone's got their own journey. I think another element of all of this is when is it best to do a joint venture, or when is it best to raise money via private finance? In this climate, I think a black and white arrangement of a private lend is more preferable to a lot of people who think they want to do a joint venture, but perhaps don't really understand the risks involved of a joint venture. Because when you are in a joint venture, yes, there's the potential upside of the profit, but there's also the potential downside of the loss in, an extreme or unlikely event that's not foreseen. So yes, everyone thinks about the joint ventures as it's all going to be rosy, and most of them I think are, but there's always that scenario or that risk. And I always talk about peace of mind for people. What is going to give you peace of mind in any sort of project? And is the joint venture the best model for you, or is in fact just the black and white loan agreement the best option? And if I can give people adequate security, an adequate time frame to return their money, with terms that are like the 15-16% per annum, that is a great win-win. And I've got some success in working with people through that and to that outcome. And if we do a joint venture together as the second step, then that's working really great for me, because one, they've got to know me, I've got to know them throughout the course of the first project. And at the end of the day, I want to see them be successful developers doing their own projects if they choose. And every person that's done that approach and model with me has got their own confidence, their own set of skill and knowledge to be able to go and do that, and off the back of the different courses that they've no doubt done as well.
Yeah. So I guess the key thing there is you're trying to get to know the individual, understand their needs and their drivers, and go, well, is the higher return, really what they're after, and is their risk profile adequate, or are they really wanting certainty and they just want to lock it in? And whilst you can't guarantee an interest rate, folks, be really careful about, don't use the word guarantee. A lot of people, you're going to pay back a secured creditor before you're paying back your profits.
Correct.
And so from where they sit in the waterfall of payments coming out, the senior debt gets their money first.
Yes.
Then the second lender, in this case, the private lender, gets their money second.
Correct.
And then Matt gets paid third. So the project has to go south, and it has to go south a long way before they start to lose their funds.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the thing that's at risk is how much money does Matt keep? So it's whether or not they want to run the risk of, the loss in exchange for the upside. But for the people that do want to run that risk, they do want that joint venture type arrangement. You've got to maintain that relationship through the whole project.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you maintain that relationship through the whole project?
Yeah, so, and it's great to see people transform throughout the life of a project, and 9 times out of 10, I've seen people grow in confidence as they've got new skill and new knowledge, and seen the execution throughout the life of a project. The frequent project updates through Facebook, conversing on the phone, Google Meets. It's the communication and the strength of the relationship, I think, which gets you through. Money does, change people, but where there's value alignment at the outset, like I don't do joint ventures with everyone. Like I want to make sure there's value alignment. They understand me, and I understand them and what's important for them. So, and look, at the end of the day, if I enjoy hanging around them and they enjoy hanging around me, there's got to be an element of fun here. Like this is not a job, it's a business, and I want the project experience to be great for everyone.
Okay. So do you do that with weekly updates? Do you do that with, so you touched on before, sharing access to some of your back end and your documentation and things like that? So
yeah, I'm very active on Facebook for a couple of reasons, to demonstrate my company's capability, my passion, but within the project we have a private Facebook group where we provide frequent updates. We also do on-site tours for investors that are in Brisbane, and with the builder or with the civil engineer, and that's a real value add. So yeah, but there's different tools, online tools that I use to provide updates and things like that.
Yeah, and one of the things that you've not mentioned, but I've certainly noticed, is you're very big at building a social network where you'll invite people around for drinks, and you'll whether they're an investor or not, or a potential investor, you'll get them all surrounding each other, so they're all talking about property as a whole, and then serendipitously you're over here having one conversation, and over here everyone's going, hey, what's happening with this? And so everyone roundabout is actually talking about, hey, how do we get involved with Matt? So
yeah, I think that's the fun element, isn't it? And building a community together, and we are better together. And I know you model that a lot, Rob, with your monthly functions, and it's an extension of that. It's a compliment. I've never ever seen it as a competition to it or anything like that. It's a compliment, absolutely.
It's mate, it's all good.
Not even close. But that's just me wanting to give back, check in with people, introduce people, network. Yeah, and it works.
Yeah. What is, without naming an individual or a project, what is the kind of scenario where it's gone horribly wrong and you've had to deal with the worst case scenario? Holy shit, how do I get out of this? how do I communicate the bad news? How do I keep the rapport? How do I maintain the relationship and keep the project moving forward?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of a specific case.
Without naming a specific someone, see if you can do that. Okay, well, have you ever had an instance where the project is stalled? Let's go there, and you kind of go, well, now our holding costs are going to start to blow out, and
yeah, definitely through the pandemic, build costs increased. So did property prices, thankfully, in a good proportion in our favour. Having the conversation with our money partners in Sydney on the build cost increases was hard. One, because there's a contractual matter of, what line do we take contractually? Do we say no and jeopardise the relationship and the completed build, or do we absorb this and move on and exit and everyone's happy? So I think there were 3 or 4 conversations like that where we did absorb some of the extra cost from the build. But in the grand scheme of things, it was the right thing to do to preserve the relationship. The last thing I wanted, or my business partner or investors, was that builder to go broke. And I'm not suggesting they were even close to going broke, but it becomes a risk for us to manage, and the mitigation was definitely to absorb part of it. Yeah, but those conversations were hard because, I'm very big with my project management background to have baseline schedules in terms of time, baseline costs in terms of planned profitability, and I run monthly cash flows where I'm actually tracking actuals against the baseline so that we can project the future profit. So project management 101. But in those monthly meetings, there's definitely data that suggests you're on track or perhaps not on track, and I think just being clear on why there's a deviation in time or a deviation in cost is really important. And every investor I've ever worked with and money partner, they're all very understanding when the conversation is transparent and there's a reason why there might be bad news. Because at the end of the day, I'm not the builder. I never intend to be the builder. So there's a large element that I just don't control. But I do see myself as an extension of the build team, reporting back to my investors on the outcomes we've signed up and need to keep.
Very good. So now 17 projects in, the first 14 were JVs, and you've only just started to transition to that equity model that we were talking about before.
Yeah, correct.
So in hindsight, would you have liked to have transitioned earlier? When you look at from a pure how much money does Matt keep, would you like to have transitioned a little earlier?
But potentially. At the same time, everything happened so quick for me. I had a strategic goal of getting into one new profitable project every quarter, which effectively became one new profitable project every month. And I was attracting those through my network, builders and investors. And in a way, maybe I couldn't see the forest for the trees, and it was a few people that sort of said, well, maybe you can structure this differently. But I do come back to the JV model is a great collaboration of skills and contribution. And, I can go on holiday knowing that my JV partner can run it, without me. So I think there is a lot of sort of other benefits to just, what's in it for me in terms of a financial gain that perhaps we haven't sort of touched on. That is really important. It is fun to do a JV with someone else. It is fun to collaborate with them. People bring different perspectives around design to the table that perhaps I wouldn't necessarily think of. So yeah, I mean, yes, you can achieve similar outcomes through consultants, of course. I think of late, I just want to be able to prove a few things to myself and demonstrate a different type of capability with how I'm finding sites and raising money. And it sort of takes my thinking to what's next for me in terms of property development and how I can bring people along that journey as well. Because the model's the same, but I want to keep doing higher end homes to owner occupier market. I've now got an assistant development manager that's full time with me. I've got an office in the Valley in Brisbane, which is amazing. So I think for me that the energy of how I go about doing things is really important. Like if I want to work with someone and we get on well, we'll find a way to do something together. And how it's structured, whether it be a JV or a private finance, is really important. And actually having JV agreements and actually having loan agreements and everything documented, squared away, because that's just vital. But yeah, I have no regrets.
Yeah. Okay. And so next phases for you, mate. So you're a long way down, I guess, the next phase. So most people start with JVs, then they move to equity, then they start to move to, I guess, having an AFSL. So that's Australian Financial Services License.
Yeah, definitely.
And you've certainly got that on the cards, haven't you?
Yeah, I do. I will launch that at the right time. I guess at the moment, I'm refining my processes and my systems to attract more of those high net worth individuals, potentially family offices. It's always better on a project to have fewer people than more. Managing, 8 people on a project is very doable, but it's better to have 1 or 2 people, But yeah, the AFSL path will happen at the right time, and strategically, I'm very clear on what I want to achieve there. It is a massive outlay, and I've been counselled by numerous people, self included, just what the undertaking is. But my position is it's relative to what my goals are over the next 5-10 years, and I will definitely go that path, and in collaboration with my non-bank lenders. Again, not to be a competition to them at all, but to be a complement to their offering. So it's very much going to be a private equity offering. But just at a larger scale.
Yeah, and that allows people to go into a pool of funds as opposed to an individual project, and then that pool of funds can, I guess, choose many projects to actually invest in. So I guess that's from a legal and compliance perspective, folks, that's a huge undertaking to actually do, but it allows Matt to then start to advertise for investors as opposed to having lots of one-on-one conversations, which is time-consuming and challenging. And
in terms of the product focus or the developments, it's pretty much just the same sort of residential higher-end homes. I see a lot of developers sort of go small and all of a sudden they're doing high-rises. That's not on my radar. I think I will get there at the right time, but it's more just consolidating what I've started, finishing to completion, the projects I have, ensuring that my reputation and my integrity is always, how it should be and of the utmost standards, and doing more projects, but they'll be residential, higher end homes too. Yeah,
very good, mate. Have you got any parting words of wisdom that you'd like our folks out there who haven't yet done deal number 1 and they're trying to get money partners? What would be, I guess, let's just make it 3 key points that they should take away.
Yeah, I guess 1, just being really clear on what it is you want to do. What is your strategy? Rob always talks about what is your strategy, and actually get really committed to that. But probably even before that, what is your why? Like I had a couple of conversations with people yesterday, and on both occasions it was, what is your why? And I think for me, I got really clear on my why. So Kai Bell is the name of my company. It's the name of my 3 kids, Kai Abiel, and it's personal for me. And my results and level of commitment has demonstrated I've really tapped into my why. And, whether it be a more realistic dream board, or you got to go test drive the car or really experience that dream to make it real for you, then I think that is a massive and vital task to do. So many people want to transition to full-time property development. So I think just get serious about it. We do and I myself used to have it as a side hustle. But I think you just got to get up earlier, or just find a way through a buyer's agent or whatever way to get the outcome. So I guess my first point was really just getting clear on your why, getting serious about it, and then just taking massive action. And unfortunately, a lot of people just get bogged in the detail, and they need to know A to Z before they do anything, and therefore they unfortunately don't do anything. So I think you just got to know enough about site acquisition and how you're going to buy it and what the project vision is. So just keep it simple, and just take action.
Yeah. So my guidance on the needing to know everything. Imagine yourself in a helicopter. You want to go up to the 10,000 foot view and have a look down and see. Look, I can see there is a path, but how to actually cut through the weeds down the bottom. You kind of land the helicopter and go down through the weeds, and when you hit your obstacle, you jump back up again, and you have a look at what's the best way around that obstacle, right? So you don't need to know everything. You need to know where you're going. You need to know when you're off course. But if you understand that, then there's always a way.
Yeah, you would often say, or use the analogy, it's easier to move a ship that's moving than a ship that's not. And I think just as long as you're doing something every day or every week, you're going to see that action and results in your business before you know it.
Mate, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your journey with these guys. And folks, this was pre-recorded, so we will do what we can to actually answer your questions, I guess, via text message. But I guess usually these are live, but this instance, we didn't actually touch on that. We are both from Brisbane, and we're sitting in a hotel room in Sydney to have this interview. So hence why it's not live, folks. But mate, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I guess love seeing the progress that you've made.
Thank you for your mentorship.
And very, I guess, I'm super excited about seeing where you can actually go, mate.
Thank you.
All good. Okay, folks.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
See ya.